What's law? I'm 58 years old. What's laws that bring you in this country? Yeah. Because I'm not lying to law.
Got it.
Are you good?
Yeah.
I have personal protection equipment they want to take off.
Good.
Well, that's just the desktop. Just something, yeah, I just want to make sure that it's, because there might be a display on both. Both. Okay, so we go back to the display. Back to that screen behind that. Mirror display. Bam. There we go. Okay, so in theory, yeah, keep that for now. Cool. And it'll just be a plug and play. So I'll leave this with you.
Yep.
So, and when it's time, it's literally just unplug from here and then into there. All right.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Another day of freedom, right?
Very pleased. They would do the same thing.
Yeah. Whether you want. Have you found supporters and unions and found a couple of different flex spots? Just pretend you're see if you want to use house.
I'm still going to have a little list of 3 calls. Seniors support. Nancy Green So I'm just going to have
Well, I understand this is coming from a lot of places, but to thine own self, you take care of it. You can't hold and as you said, Scotland
Certainly there.
Right.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. We do have quorum. I'd like to call the meeting of the Budget Subcommittee for City Hall and Etobicoke Civic Center Consultations to order. I want to welcome everybody here. My name is Councillor Gary Crawford. I am the Budget Chair, and I'm pleased to be out here in Etobicoke to be listening to you today. I have to my right Councillor Mike Layton and Councillor Francis Nunziata, and of course you do all know Deputy Mayor Holiday. He's with us. And we just have a few procedural things we have to get through, then we'll get to listening to what you have to tell us. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. You can, of course, follow us on your computer, tablet, or smartphone at toronto.ca/council. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Interest Act? Seeing none. Just wanted to, we're here again, as I said, to listen to your deputations, comments, concerns, anything you want to provide us on this year's 2020 capital and operating budgets. We have been going across the city in the last couple of days, listening to residents. From my perspective, and my colleagues would agree with me, that it's incredibly important that we hear your opinions on the 2020 budget because, of course, it impacts all of us. It impacts you on a daily basis. And as we are preparing this and going through the process of making decisions, that'll go to executive next week or the week after and then full council. We do need to reach out and listen to you on, as I said, your comments on this. So this is your opportunity to speak to us in whatever form, in whatever aspects, or whatever part of the budget you want. You will have just a procedure. You will have 5 minutes to speak to us. There is a clock. I'm trying to think whether the timer is right up there. So you'll have 5 minutes. I'll give a quick little indication when you're getting close to your 5 minutes if you haven't noticed, and then we'll wrap it up soon after that. And then after that, there'll be an opportunity for questions. Any one of us can ask you a question. So I just sort of hold off before you leave after you've spoken, see if there are any questions. If not, you can go back to your seat and I'll ask the next person to come up. Are there any questions, my colleagues, on the process at all? Great. As I said, we're looking forward to hearing you. I'll begin with the first speaker, Donna Marie Batty. You'd actually go to the podium, and I believe if the red light is on, then the speaker is on, and you can just speak.
I have a few suggestions to the budget committee about how to reduce revenue and decrease waste. Now that the city has declared a climate emergency.
I'm just wondering, is there a little button in front of you?
Just pull the microphone down
Pull
a little bit.
the microphone down. Yeah, and get closer to it.
Kiss the mic.
Hello? Oh, that's better.
There we go.
Okay, so now that the city has declared a climate emergency in Toronto, we've got to figure out how to lower our emissions in order to meet our climate targets. I propose that the city adopt a climate of conservation stance, meaning that in all of its undertakings, conservation is a priority. Conservation can play an important role both in reducing emissions and in saving money. Think about how this could apply to waste management. Okay, so please consider the blue bin. It contains items that are used once and discarded, and most of these items are plastic, a material that produces greenhouse gases from extraction to refining to waste management. How about disincentivizing the creation of this waste in the first place? And so here I have two suggestions. Charging fees for the first suggestion is charging fees for the larger bins. Right now, there's no fee attached to blue bins regardless of their size. Meanwhile, many residents have misunderstood the 3 R's and believe that to fill a large blue bin with recyclables is an environmentally friendly deed, and it isn't. Charging for the larger bin would convey the fact that the city doesn't want us to produce more waste. I think we're giving out the wrong message right now with the great big huge blue bins that are free. The second thing I'd like the city to think about is that waste going into the blue bin be separated. We now understand that recycling plastic doesn't work because it costs more to recycle items than to produce new ones. Plastic escapes into ecosystems. It really only gets downcycled and soon becomes waste again. Since waste plastic has little or no value, can we work on a system that separates plastics and other blue bin contents so that items that do have value, such as paper, metal, and glass, can be salvaged and sold? Right now on the city's own website, you say, contaminated recycling is currently costing the city millions annually. Paper, metal, and glass have value to recyclers and can provide more profit to the city. These resources are now being landfilled or incinerated because of contamination. And then in the Edmonton Journal in 2018, a recycling industry VP backs this up. He says, if homeowners could properly sort the recycling, the city could actually get a good price for the product. Local entrepreneurs could use it and avoid the cost of trucking it from elsewhere. You could eliminate or substantially reduce all the garbage fees, he said. So what I'm saying is that the blue bin could be separate, the blue bin content should be separated. And to do this, I propose week 1, pick up newspaper and cardboard. Week 2, pick up glass. Week 3, pick up metal. Week 4, pick up plastic, but only until, I don't know the new name of the infrastructure committee, but only until the infrastructure committee bans and regulates single-use plastic. Once those regulations are in place, plastic waste should be dealt with as a hazardous waste, because that's what it is, and no longer included in regular pickup. Residents should be reminded that Toronto has adopted a climate of conservation and educated regarding plastic's toll to the environment, the high cost to recycle, etc. And I just want to stress that plastic does play a real role in an environmental degradation, and this should not be dismissed. Plastics were recently added to the Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movements of Hazardous Wastes and Their Disposal, and Canada is a signatory to this convention. Promoting a culture of conservation is an economic win for everyone, the city and its residents.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Nope, seeing none. Thank you for your deputation. Next is Patrick Byrne. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I put a letter up here. I've also got copies that I'll leave.
If you can just give, the clerk will actually distribute those to us.
And the letters, I'm turning, sorry. I'm a resident. I've actually been a resident of the City of Toronto since I was born, former city, resident of Etobicoke now, and the amalgamated city as well. I've been around for a while. What I'm here today to talk about is basic services. We've seen a decline in our basic services. This year I've used 2 examples I want to go through, and I've got some others. The first is our leaf pickup. Now our leaf pickup, the fundamental problem was they didn't commence. Their starting date was November the 26th. I'm raising this because I believe this is all done for budgetary purposes. They didn't finish. We don't have sidewalks. We have open ditches. Those ditches are used by the city for water retention on the overland water flow, okay? And the Works Department, in fact, they were still trying to pick up in the middle of January. But because of this date, they failed to do their work. And I believe there was extra money spent because I know they had extra crews on and they're still putzing around out there. So that was a mistake by them. I'm asking that end and don't start anything later than the beginning of November. Stephen, you'll know more about that. But and they did it the first year of the new council with the wards when they changed. So it was a little difficult to deal with. We knew then there was a problem, but nothing was done about it. And you cannot get to anybody. There's no public presentation for this. You wind up calling the councilor's office. It's a waste of time for us and for them. The second thing I want to raise is something the city's been doing and just announced as well, is the snow plowing. So local roads are now being done at 8 centimeters rather than former 5, okay? We don't get a lot of services. Our interface with the city is really garbage pickup, snow plowing, basic stuff. As I said, we don't have sidewalks. This 8 centimeters, what happens is when they come down, and we're just off of Burnhamthorpe, so sure, they go through there, but they leave a ridge. Now, they don't come back to us until much later. So we've already got a ridge. So if you've got anything of any type of small car, which my daughters have, you can't get cars through there. They wait for some other bigger vehicle to go through. This is the stuff that is cause and effect. This is what happens with these policies. So that's one thing I want to raise as well. The other things I've raised in my letter are also things like our water rates. I remember when David Miller brought them in, and it was a 9% compounded increase in rates. It's gone on increased, and it's also now, I think it's 4% under John Tory's regime. So this has gone through 3 mayors, through Miller's regime, through Ford's regime, and now through Tory's regime. If you look at, and you probably, if you live in the city, you're going to see your water, your wastewater, and your garbage. And by the way, garbage was originally part of our original tax bill. When we paid it, garbage was separated when we went to forms of recycling, which was fine. But the fact is, I asked a question in the budgetary meetings, I guess the last time, about three years ago. Where did that money go? Because now I understand from the information I got from Public Works is that there's about $1 billion in the budget for that part. So if we're now paying it on these fees, which are actually taxes, our taxes didn't go down. We didn't get a credit on one side. We're not paying twice for the same thing. I never got a proper answer to that. So I know the money's being spent inside the city, but the point is that the fees come out, nothing drops on one side, we're paying for it separately. I mean, it's a bureaucratic maneuver with the funding, but I'm just telling you what's going on. People understand that. They know what it is. The other thing, well, I've talked about the water and I've talked about the garbage. It's fundamentally that. And we think, and the other thing too is our taxes are going up every year. We understand that. But we don't understand our taxes are going up, our basic services are in decline. And they really are. So we're paying and we're not getting service. And I don't think it's any more money. We're not asking for more money here. This money is in the budget. This is basically what the city functions. These are the basic functions of the city. And it's not happening. And it is in decline. It's a slow decline. It's gradual, but it's happening every year. And this is the kind of stuff that comes out. We get lesser service. We pay more. So that's what I've got to say. And be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Deputy Mayor Holliday.
The protocol is the guest goes first. But you're a guest in Etobicoke, so how do we sort that? Thank you for coming. Perhaps I couldn't have said it better, but I'm going to have to ask you some questions to try to feed you information because that's our protocol. Do you have any advice for us with respect to the leaves? It's important, and as you would imagine, I've spent a lot of time on that subject this year.
Yes, you did.
We are challenged because we got to wait for the leaves to get off the tree. One of the things that struck me with the new wards is the size of the map of collection, and you talked a lot about ditches and the value of that truck coming to clean the ditches and to help deal with trees because we've got a lot of them in Etobicoke. Between talking to your neighbors and so on, if we're not able to do this well, should we continue the program?
Okay, let me start historically. So when I moved out here, it was the city of Etobicoke.
Yes.
Right? And we did have open ditches. They did it, as you know, through your father as well. This has been going on for over 3 decades. We never had issues. There was never a problem, and it's very efficient because it's 3 men, 1 truck. It vacuums, it mulches.
Yep.
So the stuff is used for overcover. All right?
Agreed.
The ditches are taken out, they're cleaned out. So they're used for water storage, for overland flow, which has now become very important to the city for flood protection. All right. And we did have flooding in that storm. I guess it was in 5 or 6 years ago when we got the big side. The other side of our street flooded because their ditches were plugged up. All I can tell you is that timing, it worked before. It was working fine. When the city of Toronto first took it over, they had a lot of issues. And I don't want to go into it. I mean, Peter Milchin was our councillor then.
Yes.
They did some pretty crazy things. I watched them try to load leaves with front-end loaders and dump trucks, loose leaves. That's how crazy it got. They finally got back to using it the same way Etobicoke was using it. In fact, I think they're doing it out in Scarborough as well. They took our machines out there. So the system works. There's nothing wrong with it. And when they do it, it's okay. This year was simply caused because somebody chose November 26th and they went in December the 9th, and if it snows, they stop. And you can't do that.
Would it surprise you that the scope has creeped over the years to include streets that don't have ditches? And
No,
on
it doesn't
balance, all
surprise
of
me
that creates
It
a,
doesn't surprise me because this year they focused on that because they didn't want the catch basins on the roads with curbs to be blocked. So that was another thing they got. So they were desperately trying to get this stuff cleared out. So no, I know they do them all, and I know it's large. But as I said, we went through decades with no problems, and it was easy. And we're the ones that do the work. We're the ones that move everything out to the curb. Everything's lined up. And by the way, most of those trees are city trees. They're in the road allowance. So it's a good system.
all I can say is thank you for talking to us. We should have a coffee one time, and I'd like to hear more.
I don't want to have to make calls in the fall.
Yeah, I'm going to let my colleagues have a chance to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nunziata had some.
Yes, just a couple comments. So as far as the leaf pickup, you do realize that not everyone in the city receives that service.
Councillor Nunziata, I do, but you have to understand
Yeah.
something as well. We don't get sidewalk plowing. We don't get any of that.
Yeah, but you mentioned you don't have sidewalks, but you can, if you want, with your local councillor. If there are streets that don't have sidewalks, the city could put sidewalks on your street.
I don't think they want to put sidewalks. on the
Well,
street.
that's the problem.
Okay, I'm not asking.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is
Yeah.
we had a system that worked for decades.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not something that wasn't manageable. This isn't anything new.
No,
This is when you get somebody in trying to run something new, changing it, and incurring all kinds of difficulties.
Well, I do know that in my ward, there's just a portion of my ward in the western area gets that service, others don't, which people get angry about because not everyone gets the same service. And the people that are getting the service, you're absolutely correct. The starting date, it's always run into a problem because you've had bad weather and all the leaves are thrown on the street and then they're not picked up because you have the rain. And I agree with you on that. The timing is
This year
off.
I'm sorry to say it, this year was idiotic. I
Yeah.
don't know who in their right mind would decide to do a
Well,
program
I don't know.
to start it on November the 26th. It was just nonsense.
Yeah, well, I think that they want to get the service done before it snows, and so, but we've ran into problems in the last 2 or 3 years. You're right about the timing of the service, but
That part is simple.
but I just wanted to mention to you, not everyone gets that service. So,
But they get other services that we don't get.
well,
Okay,
Okay.
so there's a trade-off.
yeah, thank
We
you.
don't get sidewalk clearing either, so.
Yeah.
Patrick, this is fascinating because there's some internal politics here about leaf removal that I didn't understand, and I think that you've actually given me the first explanation that made any sense to why we should
I'm an engineer.
continue
I know
it.
how this all works.
No, but it makes perfect sense that in a system where you have ditches that could get full of leaves, that the city would want to take them out. And in the case of catch basins, at least in the neighborhood that I
I can
represent,
tell you the Works Department panicked this year because our ditches were filled. They actually, I said they didn't pick them up. They came January the 16th. They were out there. You
yeah,
know
but
why?
everyone knows you can't pick up leaves in January. If you leave them there past the first frozen snowfall,
Councillor
you
Lee,
can't pick up the
I
leaves.
understand that, but
You
just
can't do it by hand.
I understand that, but just so you know, the Works Department knows exactly what the impact is because understand something, if they're not picked up, you could be looking at class action lawsuits for flooding. That's how bad this is, okay? But we're used as part of that to retain that water. So it's helping everybody else. It's not going into Mimico Creek.
So Patrick, I'm going to answer part of your question about how the city, what happened to those, your tax dollars that were formerly paying for your solid waste collection. I'm going to do it with an example in the form of a question.
Yes.
Because, by the way, part of this, I just want to just break in quickly. It's great to have a dialogue. Dialogues are great. But part of the protocol, I'll give you a few extra seconds here. But part of the protocol is we ask, you speak to us and we ask you questions.
Way more
Council.
fun doing it this way, though.
I know, but I'm having to be chairing it a little bit, so ask the question.
So all I actually have to say to make it a question is, would it surprise you that? Would it surprise you that in the case of this year is a great example. We are ending part of the rebate program that was formerly your taxes that would have been spent on waste collection. What happened was we were giving it back to you by way of a rebate on your
Wasn't that
bin.
based on the size of?
But based on the size of bin, no, the cost of collection was based on the size of bin. Everyone's rebate was the same. But the difference in cost then resulted about the size of the bin you got. But over the last several years, I can't remember how many years, I think it's been 5. It was before your time, but only by about a year. the last two cycles have been big. What we've done is we've removed the rebate from extra large bins first, then large bins. This year, it's half of the medium bin and half of the small bin rebate. So what's happened is we're now removing that rebate so you're not seeing your money come back to you, because my rationale would be we are artificially trying to keep taxes low by offsetting the increase in taxes by using that rebate. So this year, I think the number is about equivalent to 1% tax increase across the city. So like it or not, and this all started with would you be surprised? I think that's what I said. That is what has happened to at least the solid waste portion. The water portion, I think you could argue much the same, that what's happened is it has gone to fill a hole in our tax-supported budget.
Globally, the only thing I'd say in response is that we've taken things that were a tax bill, we've now got our tax bill, and now we've got our fees coming in for water, for wastewater, and for garbage, okay? And as a ratepayer, we pay these. And I've seen this side, you know, no, I'm not complaining about it, but this has grown exponentially. As I said, 9% compounded for I don't know how many years, and under
9 years. It was 9 over 9.
9 over 9, and then now we're at 404 for whatever, and these are compounded rates. Look, you should, I don't know if what you guys get, but I see my bill, okay, and there's nothing changed in my house, and it's huge. I know we've always said the City of Toronto has low residential rates of taxes, but that's because it's subsidized basically by the commercial downtown. But the fact is, that side of the residential, that's all residents talk about. Okay, I only got my little neighborhood that go around, but that's what it is. So it's being focused on, and they're not happy, and they don't understand it. Okay, I know you say it's a fee, we see it as a tax. It's just another tax. So anyway, I'll let it go at that. But if somebody could just make sure that they don't, like, somebody whenever they show up, because we don't get a chance to speak to them, don't go any later in the first week of November. Even if there's some left over, at least it's gotten the most of it's picked up.
Patrick, you have enlightened me beyond words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
I'm not going to try to take that away now.
John Sprague.
What was the mic you didn't want to think?
It's always come up. Something we've tried to remove from the budget, but.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is John Sprague. I'm a resident for about 20 years now, and I work in a number of anti-poverty initiatives, both practical and political. I'm here to speak mainly about the affordable housing and homelessness crisis here in Toronto. Do you want me to wait until Mr. Holliday gets back, or should I just go ahead?
No,
Okay.
he may or may not come back, so,
Okay.
but we're here.
Okay, so this is my budget presentation. Incidentally, I prepared to mail this, email this, if you can give me an address at the end of my... Okay.
We'll provide you with an email.
Thank you. There's a housing affordability crisis, as we all know very well. The average rent has gone up to $2,500 a month. That means the housing minimum income is at least $90,000 per family if you work it out per year. The minimum wage full-time is $28,000. That means even for the smallest apartment, you would have to have 3 full-time earners to afford to be housed, and that's not sustainable in any sense. We've also got a homeless crisis. Our shelters are full. We've got 1,000 names on the homeless memorial now. Homelessness is, in fact, the deadliest form of violence in Toronto. We kill more people with real estate than we do with guns or cars. The principles I would urge in responding to this for the city and the community and the committee are urgency, flexibility, and permanence. In other words, put urgent remedies in place as quickly as possible, be flexible about how we do it, and aim over the years for a permanent solution, because we're not going to get a permanent solution immediately, not in housing. Housing policy is built policy, and we've got a big deficit of building. Okay, measures today: vacant unit and luxury tax, support for micro-housing. There are a lot of unofficial and official rooming houses and group homes that shelter a huge number of people, give individuals at least a relatively stable housing situation, and they don't have support, they don't have regulation. It's important that this get done, and there should be space in the budget for these things. As for vacant unit and luxury tax, a lot more people than I have called for it. We also need budget line items for enforcement and support, both of supportive housing of various kinds, standards, enforcement, and we also need enforcement budgets on the city's recent policy, which is an excellent policy, on short-term rentals, Airbnb, and its sibling applications. We need to control ghost hotels and particularly ghost hotel conversions. And that is not going to be done without inspectors, and inspectors are not going to go, inspectors, lawyers, and other people to enforce the policy. That's not going to happen without money. We also need supportive side measures in extend library functions, funding. For homeless people, libraries are the only resource of the city that is offered relatively all day. That's available. It's a warm place. It's not just a warm place. It's a warm place with resources that homeless people can use to improve their situation. Books, computers, various other, not only facilities but programs. Increase and improve public facilities. Something as simple as washrooms this city is woefully deficient in. I have just about every advantage there is. A stable home, an appearance and demeanor that don't provoke discrimination, and the shortage of public washrooms in this city sometimes puts me at some inconvenience. For somebody who doesn't have these advantages, it's appalling. Long-term solutions, we all know: build out community housing, focus on affordability, deep affordability, that is affordability realistically to people who are making minimum wage, and permanent affordability, not solutions that go back to market rent in 5 or 10 or 15 years. And that's it.
Thank you very much. No questions? Thank you and appreciate your time. Next is Seda Yuksakya. Hopefully I pronounced that okay. Okay, Shida. Thank you very much. Welcome, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to make a deputation today. I am Şeyda Yüksekkaya from Turkey. I have been in Canada for around 10 months. I am here to have a voice of families who have difficulties in finding childcare in Toronto by sharing my own experience with you. I worked as a kindergarten teacher in different countries. Canada, for me, is the country with lots of opportunities. I believed that I could maintain my career by improving my skills. In order to do that, I needed childcare for my daughter, who is 2 years old. However, it was not too long to understand the reality, how difficult to find an affordable and available childcare center. Affordability is key, as the cost of living in Toronto is too high and childcare fees are quite expensive. I checked all daycare around my community. I visited the daycare centers or sent an email to each to ask if there was an available spot for my toddler. They put our names in the wait list, and I waited for a long time for their call. In the meantime, I was still searching training programs to get experiences in Canada. I was accepted to take leadership training under Immigrant Women Integration Program in TD Center of Learning and Development. It was a great chance for me to be involved in a new culture and to be more active in my community. However, I could not have found a place for my daughter. I started to contact the daycare centers again, but all doors were closed to me. I found a space, but it was not affordable for me. It was around $2,000 for a month. I did not want to miss the chance to join in this training. Luckily, the supervisor of Immigrant Women Integration Program provided a childminder for me. Each week, I committed to my course with my daughter around 1 hour, 15 minutes. My daughter was staying with Nene, playing with an adult, instead of being together with children who are the same with her. Except for the times when other participants needed childcare for their children, she was playing only with the Nene. I really felt sorry when I saw my daughter tired and alone. I wanted her to be together with her friends in an environment designed to fit her needs. I got an email from Children's Services telling us that we were at the top of waiting list of subsidies. I must find an available spot not to lose my chance to get subsidy. Now I started to visit centers more often than before. Each week I knocked their doors to ask for an available spot for my daughter. When I was about to give up searching and to feel hopeless, I found a space in one of the daycare near my home. It was a great coincidence finding daycare and getting subsidy at the same time. Many parents lost their chance to get subsidy just because of not having an available spot for their children. Now, both my daughter and I are very happy to be in our new environment. It's true that parents are more productive and they can contribute more to both the economy and their communities if they know that their kids are in safe and nurturing and warm environments. As a part of IWIP, I worked on a community-based research with my fellow trainee, and we focused on the issue of affordability and availability of childcare for newcomers in Toronto. One of mothers could not go to ESL because of the lack of affordable childcare. That's why she cannot speak English, even though she has been in Canada for 5 years. Another mother must find available and cheap daycare for her daughter after maternal leave that ends in February, but she is still searching. When we interviewed with mothers, we realized that how difficult it is to access to education or to find a job for families who are on the wait list and not able to have subsidy. I asked around 90 parents what it will be the first thing or word comes to their mind when they hear childcare in Toronto. Answers are expensive, long wait list, unaffordable, and inadequate, instead of lovely, safe, trustworthy, happiness nurturing. This shows how urgent it is to be considered in order to make our future brighter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Layton will have a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that and for sharing your story with us. I think a lot of families are experiencing that same lack of childcare and then getting a subsidy to match up to make it affordable. Were you aware that the provincial government has changed the way that they're funding childcare to the City of Toronto, in particular, how the City of Toronto and how much the City of Toronto pays for the subsidies? And at this point, we're looking at next year, the city had a goal of increasing the number of subsidies to 40 to 50% of the total number of spaces. And that was to ensure affordability of and functionality of a childcare. But with the changes that'll be happening, there'll be no new subsidies that will be given out. So as we open new centers, most of which are being opened outside of the core of the City of Toronto, it's going to make it more difficult for those centers to be financially stable because they're going to have to charge more to the parents because they're not going to be able to fill them because there'll be no subsidies to fill them. Did you know that the province was making changes that were in fact going to really hurt the city's delivery of childcare?
No, I don't know.
I'm of the mind that given we probably can't change the province's mind, that we probably just have to figure out more resources to make sure we can continue to grow it. But that's an editorial comment.
Thank you so much for this. It's nice to hear that you do something for this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, Brad Lepp. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Brad Lepp. I, along with my family, live in Ward 9, Davenport. Thank you for inviting public feedback, and for listening to me today. I want to thank you all for your work in helping to make this city run. I know your jobs have gotten harder since council has been shrunk to 25, and I know that every day you need to make difficult decisions. Our city faces real challenges: affordable housing, affordable childcare, tackling climate change, poverty reduction, and tackling those challenges requires informed, courageous leadership. It also requires resources. And if it means that the city will move forward on issues that I believe in, I absolutely support raising my property taxes. One of those issues that I believe in is arts and culture, and I want to commend the proposed increase in arts funding proposed in this year's budget. Every year, there are more studies and strong evidence that demonstrates the vital link between investing in the arts and a livable city. We know that it drives tourism sector and delivers economic return. We know that it results in a strong film, music, and entertainment industry. We've heard from CEOs that they're better able to recruit and retain top talent to an exciting city. We can see how communities feel more deeply rooted in this city and united by shared experiences. And we know that youth and marginalized individuals feel seen and connected when they experience arts and arts programs. And we know that through the arts, we are building a citizenry that is more inclined to volunteer, show empathy, and give back. And I think that's all well understood, and I know that you know this because over the past decade, the arts community has organized Arts Day at the city to remind you every year. And as you witness for yourselves when you go out into the communities and see concerts and shows and festivals in your wards. So thank you for your support in the arts and culture funding. I'm also excited about the Year of Public Art, that the mayor's vision of energizing and reimagining how we engage with our city. A little bit of context around that, though, is that we in the arts are used to being asked to leverage our operating and project funding to support city-led initiatives, usually with very modest increases, whether it was commemorating the War of 1812, or the Pan Am Games, or Canada's sesquicentennial. The sector is often asked to put our operations and our artistic goals on hold to support city building initiatives. And we're okay with that because we believe in the city and we believe in giving back. But art that is made by public agenda is rarely great art. It's getting harder to do our core business. There is an ever-increasing demands on our operating funding. Investing in representing new voices, welcoming newcomer artists, paying artists a living wage while keeping ticket prices low, reaching out to new audiences across the city, ensuring accessibility through ASL interpreted performances, audio described performances, relaxed performances. These are all good things, and they all take money, and they all lose money. And it means that we take fewer risks. It means we aren't growing. And so we need to balance important special projects like the Year of Public Art with meaningful support for important ongoing operations. And so I conclude with 3 considerations. Funding is best given directly to the artists. With complete support and affection for city staff, the funding is best spent in the hands of the artists. And we have a publicly accountable, transparent, openly competitive system that the sector supports and trusts, the Toronto Arts Council. And I would love to see a higher percentage of new culture funding go to the TAC. Number 2, when the mayor was campaigning for re-election, he committed to working with the arts community to develop a new vision and a new funding target that would be competitive with our peer cities across the country. We know we have art supporters in City Hall, but we have yet to see that new goal. And number 3, consider the legacy of the Year of Public Art. Let this be the beginning of something, not a fleeting moment. Use this 2020 benchmark number for the next year's 2021 culture budget, invested through the Toronto Arts Council, so that it becomes a meaningful legacy into creating a year-round celebration of cultural vibrancy in the city. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Brad. Seeing no questions. Next will be Gerald Smith. Welcome.
First of all, let me say thank you for the work that you have done and the work that you continue to do. And I'd like to welcome you to the real west end of the city of Toronto. My name is Jerry Smith, and I'm a longtime resident in Etobicoke. I've lived, worked, and played here for some 35 plus years. As a volunteer, I've had the honor of serving as a board member of both Lakeshore Arts, where I also served as president, and Arts Etobicoke, two valued lassos working in support of the city's strong neighborhood strategy and the city's ECDEV and cultural division strategy of inclusion and equity in areas outside the downtown core. I was also the founding chair of the advisory committee of the Assembly Hall, I think certainly one of the City of Toronto's finest community spaces. And as a program manager at Humber College, School of Creative Arts, for over 3 decades before I retired, I established the college's professional theater training program and as well founded Humber's one-year post-diploma certificate program in arts management, training the next generation of arts leaders. And as a freelance consultant since retirement, I've contracted to work with a range of community-based organizations across Toronto, most recently with Nielsen Park Creative Centre here in central Etobicoke. Over time, my contributions have been publicly recognized, and I am grateful and humbled to have received the Innovator of the Year Award from Humber College, the City of Toronto Volunteer of the Year Award in 2000, and Cultural Champion from City of Toronto Culture Division in 2010. Notwithstanding that, my message here today is that the arts and culture make a difference to Toronto, for Toronto, in Toronto. To coin a phrase, quote, "We wish to be a world-class city. Arts and culture is an incredibly important part of every city. It's an important part of the ecology of a successful city." I thank you, Councillor Crawford, for that quote from this last weekend's Star. So, councillors, please take our message back downtown as the city pauses and plans its way through its 2020 budget. I would like to ask for 3 things. First, as the Arts Day at City Hall brought to your attention, I ask that Mayor Tory and Toronto City Council continue as champions for investment in the arts as a key ingredient of a vital and prosperous city. Second, the City Council this year increase investment by $2 million for the culture budget. And third, in consultation with the arts community, City Council should fulfill Mayor Tory's campaign commitment to develop a new cultural plan for Toronto, which will set funding targets reflective of Toronto as both an international arts destination and as a city with locally accessible arts programs and participation, as we have here in Etobicoke. This recommendation echoes my colleague who just spoke. Building on ECDEV's recent Economic Development and Cultural Division Strategy, 2018-22, this cultural plan will be the successor to Creative Capital Gains, which was released in 2011. It'll be a true vision for the City of Toronto through the lens of art and culture. Speaking of money, just a little bit of a sidebar for me, because I have the time. I'd like to congratulate Mayor Tory and the council on deciding to increase taxes for homeowners across the city. I think it's a smart move. It's one that's been slow in coming. And we're now getting to a point that's saying, I want to help pay my fair share. In conclusion, it's my expectation that all members of the Budget Committee get and understand the value of investment in community-based arts and culture programming. After all, every one of you, all 6 of you, earned a grade of A from Arts Vote during the most recent election. You understand us. You get us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any questions? Just quickly, I just threw a question. I'm sure you're aware that in this budget, there is a $2.5 million increase for arts and culture. $500,000 of that is approximately for the Year of Public Art, but there's $2 million already in this budget for an increase in the arts funding, which I'm sure you're aware. Along with, so the commitment, of course, is you're aware that over the next couple of years or year, we'll be looking at the new cultural plan that is in the works.
looking forward to it. But as you and I both know from experience, what starts out in the original planning budget and ends up at the council table doesn't necessarily always make its way through. So to that end, I thank you. I remind you, the members of the Budget Committee, for your wisdom in spotting this as a good investment. And for your colleagues at council table, recognize that it's a good value investment.
So as the budget chair, you will recognize that I'll be putting my support behind that with my colleagues as we go through the decision-making process.
As I recognize, Councillor, all of you earned an A at Art's vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, next is Brian McLean.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I'm a resident of Etobicoke. I have 2 young adult children in their 20s, and I expect I may have grandchildren in the next decade or so. So climate change is something that's been of growing concern for me, because looking ahead to their lives that are likely to be much more affected than mine has been, I've been lucky. So I've been attending public consultations for the Transform TO team. I attended 3 in different parts of Etobicoke to educate myself. And I was excited by how this work was really being made real and concrete at the city level by the research and the planning that they're doing. So I guess I want to speak to the Budget Committee about the long-term goals and priorities of the Budget Committee. There are 6 budget priorities listed on your handout here, and none of them actually focuses on the climate emergency that Council as a whole declared last fall. So I wonder, how do we bridge this gap? We've acknowledged that there's an emergency, and yet it's not a budget priority. So I know that you're planning to spend a little more money on the Transform TO team, which I applaud. But I continue to ask, how is this change going to happen in real terms on the deadlines that we acknowledge now? There are, I mean, one of the issues for me is perhaps developing a climate lens or a carbon budget that is well understood and well promoted through the entire city, so people realize that we're all involved in this. The average homeowner still, I don't think, appreciates that his or her home is expected to be retrofitted to reduce its energy consumption, perhaps to transition away from natural gas. All of the changes that are incumbent upon us, I don't think are trickling down to the average citizen yet in concrete terms. What does this mean for me? What part will I have to play in this? So there's a big communication job, I think, that's needed. People receive bills from the city for taxes, for water. Maybe some targeted information has to become a regular part of those communications, so that the transition that we all need to make is expressed very clearly. So among the gaps I sense, one is planning. The budget, the Transform TO people say that 75% of trips that we make under 5 kilometers have to be done by bike or by foot within the next decade or 2. So that means in a spread out community like Etobicoke, where we're so used to driving to buy milk, diapers or whatever, those locations have to be planned to be closer to more of us, so that we can walk or cycle to them instead of emitting greenhouse gas emissions through getting into our car. That's a planning issue, and that has to be, I think, proactively addressed. How do we bring daily needs closer to people in communities? And that also means, adding to density, I think, to make those businesses viable. So how do we increase housing density, especially, so that more people are closer, and we have sort of villages across Etobicoke to make these things brought closer to people. And that addresses the housing crisis, which is a simultaneous crisis to the climate crisis. How do we aggressively seek out locations to add housing in a denser way than we have in Etobicoke at present? Our former environmental commissioner, Dan Sachs, said that here in Ontario, land use or urban sprawl is our equivalent to the oil sands in Alberta in what they contribute to the environmental problem of greenhouse gas emissions. So in a spread out community like Etobicoke, we have to think about how do we plan things differently? How do we make walking and cycling more attractive and safe? I was devastated to hear that a school in South Etobicoke, the principal has forbade the presence of a bike rack on school property.
Have to wrap up.
Because he fears that that cycling is simply too unsafe in Etobicoke. Those are my ideas. I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Susan Nagy from Lakeshore Arts.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I realized yesterday as I was preparing my notes that this is the 20th time that Lakeshore Arts has made a budget deputation in support of arts funding. And over that period of time, we have advocated for a successful $25 per capita increase. We've seen new arts initiative, Cultural Hotspot, Arts in the Park, formation of Street Art Toronto, and the addition of 2 new lassos. I would like to applaud Council's recognition of the importance of the arts and the contribution it makes to the well-being and the vibrancy of this city. Collectively last year, the lassos engaged 13,250 children and youth, employed 1,125 artists, delivered over 500 programs, and attracted 376 donors. We support emerging artists and arts organizations by offering resources and mentorship, which in turn strengthens the arts sector. Torontonians want access to the arts in their own neighborhoods. Our role is to listen to their needs, hire artists that reflect the community we are serving, and create arts initiatives that focus on issues the community wants to explore. At Lakeshore Arts, we understand the value of having access to free arts-making opportunities. The arts are a contributing factor to persons' well-being and can play a positive role in a person's mental health, help seniors find community, or contribute to that aha moment that youth discover when they have hidden talents. Yet because our programs are free or heavily subsidized, many are oversubscribed. We recognize that there are still gaps in our delivery due to the lack of capacity and access to cultural spaces. Continued and increased support to the lasso's envelope will allow us to offer a more comprehensive living wage for arts workers, engage more individuals in partnership with artists and stakeholders to meet the demands of the communities we serve. I understand that seeing a return on your investment from an economic perspective is important, yet quantitative targets need to be balanced with qualitative outcomes. As an arts organization, we do that through our stories, and so I'd like to share one with you. Last year, we partnered with Community Living Toronto to deliver a 9-month theatre arts program to a group of intellectually challenged adults in South Etobicoke. And after a lot of practice, enveloped in training, laughter, and growth, the participants put on a show. And so that sounds really simple, but in many cases, these individuals have never been given a voice, never been given leading roles, or seen as valuable contributors in their communities. So we prepared them, and then we gave them the spotlight. We also run PA Day camps for children ages 7 to 12. Last October, the theme for the camp was theater, and also it was the International Disabilities Awareness Month. So we invited a few of the season's community living members from the theater program to attend as workshop leaders. To say it was a success is an understatement. I would like to share the impact this had on one of the young participants, Nella. Her mother, who wrote this, was unable to attend today, so I'm going to share it on her behalf. This past PA Day at Lakeshore Arts gave Nella the opportunity to learn invaluable things about others, our differences, similarities, about herself, about life. She came home enthusiastically sharing all that she had learned. She asked a million questions about the differences and similarities of people, now resolute with her newfound understanding that we are more alike than different. The program unleashed a torrent of exploration, not only valuable in relevance to our family, but in the broader sense of what it means to be human. Thank you, sincerely, Vera. This is just one story from one program. We run 60 community programs and events annually. Your increased support of 2.5, I almost said 5.2 million over the overall arts envelope will help us continue to give vulnerable voice in our communities, engage marginalized youth and isolated seniors, create the next generation of empathetic, creative thinkers and problem solvers, future leaders and city builders, giving them a safe and accessible place to gather. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Question from Councillor Nunziata.
I just have a question.
Sure.
So does the Lakeshore Arts, do you ever work with Urban Arts that's in York? Do you partner with other
Marlene,
arts
yes,
councils?
Urban Arts is a sister organization. We currently have a grant into the Trillium Foundation so that we can do some partnerships. We have made a couple of grants together that haven't been successful, but we are in constant touch and we see each other as sister organizations.
But do you ever partner with programming and?
Not at this point. We have tried. I know that she had the Boys to Men program that was in the schools, and we tried to replicate it in Etobicoke, but we couldn't find the source, the funding, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next is Brenda Shuchuk. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you and good afternoon. I represent Nielsen Park Creative Center, a partner with the city pre- and post-amalgamation since 1992. I, too, am a resident of Etobicoke. I have lived here 38 years. And even though I'm on a reduced pension as a senior, I also welcome increased taxes if that's what it's going to take to support the arts in Etobicoke. I'm also a resident, I'm the president of the volunteer board of Nielsen Park Creative Center, and I'm here today to speak to the value and impact and importance of the city investing in arts and culture. Nielsen Park Center is a city-owned facility managed by our professional staff and the board and committee volunteers on behalf of the city. As stewards of the facility, staff and volunteers have worked hard on delivering our mission, connecting to and celebrating a richer life through the arts. According to our most recent audited financial statements shared with our members this past Sunday at our AGM, Nielsen Park Creative Center generated an annual revenue of $408,410. Of that, 77% was earned revenue through program fees, registrations, membership, studio and gallery rental fees, and sales commissions. Nearly 20% was contributed revenue, taxable receivable donations, fundraising events, and sundry revenues. Less than 5% as grants, largely federal grants to employ students as staff in our summer programming. As a business partner to the city, close to 90% of our expenses were for salaries, professional staff to manage and support the facility, and programming professional artists and art instructors delivering courses and workshops. After 6 successive years of deficit, Nielsen Park is happy to announce this year that we have a $22,500 surplus that we are investing back into our working capital account. Over this past year, we've continued to serve the needs of our 6 resident groups. They are the Calligraphic Arts Group of Toronto, the Etobicoke Hand Weavers and Spinners, the Etobicoke Quilters Guild, the Rug Crafters, Humber Valley Art Club, and the Etobicoke Art Group. We have 500 members, and we attracted over 25,000 visitors and supporters throughout the last fiscal year through a combination of courses, workshops, studio access, summer and March break programs for youth, and close to 50 public exhibitions in our 3 main gallery spaces. This past November, during Handmade, we had over 1,000 visitors in one day. Currently, Nielsen Park Creative Center is actively investing in the underserved populations in our neighborhoods. As the Central Etobicoke Community Hub study demonstrated, Central Etobicoke has the highest proportion of seniors across the city, and 39% of kids in some of our neighborhoods live in poverty. NBCC is working hard, and with recent investments from the Ontario Trillium Foundation, the Ontario Seniors Secretariat, we are working with residents living in the Toronto Community Housing Senior Centres, such as the Islington Senior Centre and Don Lipa Centre that is co-located with us in Nielsen Park, and students at Silverthorne Collegiate in an arts-based project working with seniors. In closing, I really am asking the Budget Committee and Council to continue to support the sector's request for increased investment, and I'm really pleased that the $2.5 million has been proposed and hope that it stays within the budget. We ask the Budget Committee and Council to continue as arts champions that Mayor Tory promised at the mayoral art debate. Thank you very much on behalf of Nielsen Park.
Thank you. Next is Debbie Green.
Hi, it's a little unmanageable. Thank you so much for hearing my comments today. I'm Debbie Green, and I'm a resident at Ward 4, Parkdale High Park. I've lived there since 1987, and I want to speak to bicycle and pedestrian safety, as well as support for Transform TO. So I'm excited to see additional staff hired and proposed for Transform TO, which is doing an excellent job of animating citizens and neighborhoods to become carbon neutral. Much more support for this program is needed if we hope to begin meeting our climate responsibilities and make Toronto a more livable city as well. I also hope to see more support for active transportation, which is a key element of the Transform TO plan. I've been a bike commuter since 1985 from down to the University of Toronto, where I worked until I retired last spring, and have seen a steady increase in cycling in our city. And it's exciting to see more cyclists, and we should be glad of them because they are helping us to get to our Transform TO goals of 75% of trips under 5 kilometers being made on foot or by bike. As we all know, transitioning away from passenger cars when we can and encouraging active transportation reduces carbon emissions, which is a commitment the city made by declaring a climate emergency last year, a commitment that we are still a long way from meeting. Moreover, more cyclists decrease car congestion, road wear, and pollution, all good things. Sadly, the lack of good, consistent bike lanes makes riding frightening and deters many people from cycling in the city. I too find it nerve-wracking and have had a couple of near misses just in the last year. It's tough to encourage people to do something when it's scary. I would also point out that many people in my neighborhood of Parkdale do not own cars and walk, bike, or use transit for all their trips. And no one can be unaware of the terrible rate of pedestrian deaths over the last year, including another one this morning. Yet the money set aside for Vision Zero is still inadequate. While I see some really good directions in this budget, it doesn't serve us in Parkdale in the amount set aside for cycling infrastructure and safe streets. The people who are producing the lowest emissions in the ways they get around are getting the least support to continue to do so. This is especially discouraging when we see that the amount the city will have to spend on the Gardner rebuild is 14 times greater than that for Vision Zero and 17 times greater than for cycling expansion. The Gardner, in its building materials and its use, produces massive greenhouse gases, which we know we need to curtail in order to meet our climate emergency commitments. We need to counteract those emissions in all the ways that we can. So please consider tipping the balance to support active transportation and those Torontonians who are or who would like to make transportation choices that reduce our carbon footprint and make our city more livable for everyone. I urge the committee to consider climate in all of your deliberations on this budget and demonstrate that consideration by increased and ongoing support for transform TO and active transportation. And one other thing I just want to add about cycling, when we look at other budget items, it's cheap, especially when we look at roads and the Gardner, et cetera. So I would just leave you with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question.
It's a quick question from Councilman Nunziata.
You are aware that we have added in a number of cycling lanes in the city. We've expanded it out in the suburbs, correct?
Yeah, I think it just needs quite a bit more for people to feel really confident and safe to start cycling.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is Alessandra Caruso. Welcome.
Hello, councillors. Thank you for listening to my deputation today. My name is Alessandra Caruso, and I'm an early childhood education student at George Brown College. I'm here to ask you to rethink your decision to keep the childcare budget unchanged from last year. I decided to pursue a career in childcare because I believe that every child should have the right to affordable, accessible, inclusive, and quality care. I know that early education allows children to begin life with a healthy foundation of love and knowledge, and I know that early education provides parents with opportunities to work and go to school to better the lives of their families. Childcare means that my friends Sarah and Adam can return to work so that they can stop living in their horrible cockroach-infested apartment and find a better place to raise their children. With the budget as it stands, we are putting the childcare growth strategy on hold, leaving my friends and Toronto to wait another year longer. As of 2018, only 21% of Toronto's children had access to licensed childcare. This is heartbreaking. I'm hoping you take a moment to think about the individuals this decision affects, the children at risk, the families fighting for a better life. I know that childcare is important and will affect every person at some point. All I'm asking of you is to be bold and believe in Toronto's children, families, and communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next is Darlene Kulig. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Darlene Kulig. I'm an artist living and working here in Etobicoke. I've been living here in Etobicoke for over 40 years. Came from Ottawa to study at OCA. I'm connected with Arts Etobicoke. I've exhibited in their storefront gallery. I've taught a painting class there, which was well attended. Not one missed session by all the participants. And my work's been featured in their gift shop, and I've networked with other artists through them. I know what it takes to create art and to make a living as an artist, and it's a challenge. Currently, I know that artists are being driven out of the city with a lack of space and affordable housing. My son is thankfully going to be an artist. We allowed that. So he has us, that's great, but a lot of other young people don't have that privilege. We need to invest in community spaces and specifically arts venues in the West End. It's important to have access to our tribe. And speaking from my own personal experience as an artist, I'll reference Matisse. I don't paint things, I paint the difference between things. Just to give you an idea of this is sort of happy, joyful stuff that I do. Fundamentally, art is about a relationship, first with yourself and then with community. I was able, after a loss of a dear friend 13 years ago, Cynthia Stelgis, to cancer, I fell back on a practice of art that I learned early in my youth. After 20 years as a graphic designer and raising a family, I went back to art classes at Nielsen Park Creative Center. I have developed my craft with the students and the teachers and the facility that we have so wonderfully available to us. And I've had the opportunity to volunteer with Big Brothers Big Sisters at Camp Scugog. I've seen the real need for art funding. I've taught at Gilda's. I teach at Arts Etobicoke. I see the real need for art. And I visit with a 105-year-old resident at Humber Heights who's near blind, and she was a textile artist. So I was asked to come and visit with her. She just loves to talk about art. We are wired to create. We are wired to build strong relationships. So please value art and invest in art in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Wendy Radding.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Wendy Rading, and I just wanted to also thank Darlene for coming. We work with Darlene, and it's really important to hear from the artists in the community and how the arts obviously impacts them and the arts organizations. I'm the interim executive director at Arts Etobicoke, and I want to thank you for your continued support in the arts in Toronto, and specifically your support for accessible arts programming in the inner suburbs through the local arts service organizations and LASSOs. Arts Etobicoke is proud of what we've accomplished over the last 47 years, and one of our continued challenges is that our community arts programs are oversubscribed and our space is at capacity. Recently, we've been able to double our youth and senior programs through the support of a local developer, Quadrille, at Cloverdale Mall, just on the other side of the highway, and we use their community space inside the mall to support our programming. However, within the next 5 years, we'll need to move to a larger venue to accommodate our ever-growing needs of our community and to support the diversification of our programs. We know that Etobicoke has a distinct lack of community and art space, and we are taking steps to address those through creative use of pre-existing public and private spaces like parks and malls and seniors' homes. We support the City of Toronto's priorities for strategic investment in Toronto's cultural sector. We believe that everyone, regardless of socioeconomic status and where they live, deserves access to high-quality arts programming. Arts Etobicoke supports the next generation of Canadian artists through our programming. We're currently exhibiting a very talented grade 12 student in our gallery, and we've exhibited Darlene's beautiful work, who's Darlene, an established artist in the community. And we provide learning, exhibiting, and performing arts opportunities right in artists' own neighborhoods. To catch up to our ever-evolving and growing community, we encourage you to maintain your commitment to arts funding. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see that $2.5 million investment stay in the budget. We'd also like, of that $2.5 million dollar investment, for $500,000 of that to go to the LASSOs, because we ensure accessible community arts in the inner suburbs. This increase will have an enormous impact on the community we serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Next is Mark Harris. Welcome, Mr. Harris. You'll have 5 minutes.
Good day. I'm Mark Harris, and I've always been attacked for trespassing just because I'm making some investigation. This is a building for the 175 Lawrence, and it has here, it's a public property, but on the fence has private. And 2 months ago, I made proposal for kitchen garden, food in school, assisted living. I told him how to do the fence of this building, and suddenly I'm attacked by G4S. I think they're not there anymore. But in this situation, people need compensation. When I asked for, we had 4 cameras in this lobby. When I went to court, they bring 1/8 of 4 camera, of 1 camera, 1/8 of 1 camera out of 4. And they put trespassing 20 feet away from the building. No security is there. Me ain't got no problem with nobody in the building. This is a junkie building. This is a crackhead building. I do people banking. I cook food for them. I take stroll and things out to the garbage and go and give them. Well, this is not my main issue, but what happened? it can cause a problem later down because I have a restraining order for against the building for 1 year. And if I cause any problem like this guy here, I could be in jail. And I wasn't wrong. But I want to address something, what I've done for the city. Since 2004, when there was MTA, even before they even had these councillors, I made a proposal to restore all TCHC homes so the youths can be involved. They were elected, I think it's 2005, 2006. Under David Miller paid millions of dollars. This is Toronto building plan for the city. The renewal plan, Toronto building plan. But my suspicion is Valentine owns this because owns this building because the only way a person can put their own personal meter in a building is if he owned the building. But Valentine got a parking meter named Sparkle, not City parking meter. So I know specifically this is his building. They don't have no private, they have public, and the owner is 931. The city had 60% of Sparkle, and they sold it. Now, I'm a journeyman carpenter. I was a shop steward with local 27 union. I work at Hamilton. I work in New York. I work in Nice, such like. Now, I made a proposal to restore all TCHC homes when at a 3 days exhibition place. We had a conference. I made a proposal to restore all TCHC homes so the youths can be involved. They give Acon the contract. Acon is union. Acon, instead of hiring local 27 union, they hire people from the shelter. This contract finished without the windows being done. I made a proposal on the Rob Ford to do the basketball court so kids won't go over to the other, and Gulliver, and the parents can see them. They took on a big contract, didn't do the basketball court. Then when they do the driveway for underground basement, they're taking old rebars and tying it, and they don't have no inspector. Now going forward, I made a proposal to Mr. Tory concerning 15%, 20% procurement for small businesses. Mr. Tory gave 15%. These councils know the criteria in repairing these buildings. This building is meticulous and very sensitive. Firstly, they measure it wrong, which they could have used the blueprint. They measure it wrong. They took out the blocking for the door. They never put it back. They could have left it, because it was solid. They left it, they took it out, and now everybody door dropping.
Mr. Harris, I'll have to ask you to wrap up. We are at your 5 minutes.
Yeah. It's a tongue like this inside the thing. People are doing short contract and then they're transferring over to another contract, and this is not right. I made over 20 proposals from 2004 to present. I made a proposal to take the sewage out of the lake. When Wellesley was being sued for $30 million, I spoke to Rob Ford, and through this I got my job broken. The city only paid $8 million out of $30 million. I'm asking the city for $1 million for all that I have done. I wrote Rob Ford already, number one. Number two, I did some work in 2018.
Thank you. I do appreciate, we gave you a little bit of extra time, and I appreciate the opportunity to
Any questions?
I don't believe so, no, but I do appreciate you coming in today. Thank you. Are there any other, this is the end of our list, is anybody else in the audience who would like to make a deputation?
Although they talk bad with Rob Ford, he never had.
Seeing none, I want to
people
appreciate everybody for coming out today. We do have, we'll be actually having an evening session as well. Where's my motion here? There it is. Anyway, just want to thank everybody for coming out today. It was appreciated the opportunity to be able to listen to you. So I would like to move that the Budget Subcommittee for City Hall and Etobicoke Civic Center consultations received for information, the public presentations, and the communications submitted by the members of the public. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We will actually be back here at 6 p.m. to hear the evening session. Thank you for coming.
Hey there, I'm sick. I don't want to give you my cold. You're doing all right? Yeah, they're doing all right. They're doing all right. Keeping me nice and busy. They're 4-2. 4-2. So driving them on crazy tonight. I'll be fast. What's the list that we have?
Etobicoke is an art community.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what we do is
Yeah.
one person from New York is here. But they bitch all the time. They send me emails bitching, what the hell are you doing? Increasing my property tax, how dare you?
And they're coming out tonight?
No, I don't think anybody's coming out tonight.
Oh, they just emailed you to